Welcome back to the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Cressey, and this is episode 203. Excited for this guest. He's a guy who's been a CSP athlete for quite a while now. Always very, very insightful, not just about baseball, but about a lot of things. You'll see how articulate he is, but really a guy who's done some awesome reflecting on who he is as a pitcher, what he needs to do to get better. Saw him really reinvent himself this past year and contribute heavily to the Detroit Tigers playoff run. So really good insights in store. I think you're really going to like it. This episode is brought to you by First Form, an awesome supplement company with a comprehensive product offering that I enjoy using myself and with our athletes. Beyond the broad product line they offer, I also love First Form's commitment to ensuring that their products are the highest quality. They meet NSF certified for sport standards for both consistency and purity. Their Formula One protein powder is the best tasting option I've had in over 20 years in the fitness industry, and they've got several great flavors to choose from. I also lean on their creatine monohydrate to support hard training, their collagen for joint health, their magnesium to help with sleep quality, and their fish oil for a variety of health benefits. Our daughters and I also share a love for their high protein meat sticks, which have become a big hit in the Cressey household for school lunches and on the go protein options as we head to gymnastics and softball practices. Of course, First Form products also have been really popular with our athletes at Cressey Sports Performance, and they're used by some of the top performing athletes and most recognizable sports franchises in the world. Above all, the people at First Form are top notch, and that's a rarity in an often unethical business. First Form is dedicated to empowering people on their fitness journeys, and that dedication is matched by only their unwavering commitment to exceptional quality and unparalleled customer service. Check them out for yourself at www.firstform.com/Cressey. That's 1stphom.com/CRESSEY and get free shipping on your order of $75 or more. Additionally, they're offering amazing 10% more than your money back guarantee if you're not fully satisfied with your purchase. Again, that's firstform.com/Cressey to get free shipping on your order of 75 or more. Today's guest is a left-handed pitcher who was born and raised in Atlanta, then attended the University of Notre Dame. His freshman season, he was named Louisville Slugger Freshman All-American and named the ACC All-Freshman team while leading the Irish with 5 saves and posting a 2.72 ERA. After 2 more years at Notre Dame, plus a summer in the Cape Cod Baseball League, he was drafted after his junior year by the Miami Marlins in the 7th round of the 2017 MLB Draft. He steadily worked his way through the minor leagues, but missed the 2020 season due to COVID before being called to the big leagues for the first time in August of 2021. He underwent Tommy John surgery the following spring, and during his rehab, he was DFA'd by the Marlins and claimed by the Detroit Tigers. Subsequently, he was removed from the 40-man roster and outrighted to AAA. He began the 2024 campaign in AAA, posting a 3.86 ERA with 46 strikeouts and 3 saves across 44-plus innings pitched. On August 1st, 2024, the Tigers selected his contract, adding him to their active roster. Over 17 appearances and 21 innings in the race for the postseason, he allowed only 2 runs and followed that stellar performance up with only 1 run allowed over 4 postseason appearances. Please welcome to the show, Sean Guenther. Sean Guenther, welcome to the podcast.
Hey Eric, it's great to be here.
I don't think I've called you Sean in years. Maybe
No,
since
that did it sounded a little weird. Yeah,
you are Gunny, let the world know. And this is your first podcast ever. So
it is. Yeah. Wish me
I'm, pre-
luck.
I'm preparing you for that savage Detroit media. Although
Yeah.
you probably already been through a postseason with them, so you'll be fine.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. So we talk about Sean Guenther as a young athlete. You're a very athletic guy. I'm gonna throw that feather in your cap right now. So I'm curious, what did the early years look like? Were you doing a lot of different things? Were you multi-sport? Were you baseball only? What'd you do?
Yeah, early years, like childhood, it was just about every sport besides football. I never actually played a down of football in my life, which I feel is pretty un-American. But I played some hockey, I played some basketball, a lot of soccer, and a lot of baseball. But I specialized pretty early. I think my sophomore year of high school was about when I stopped getting consistent at bats and just kind of started pitching. Thankfully, it worked out, so no real regrets there. But I do still think I probably could have been a reasonably good hitter if I'd stuck with it. Not professional or anything, but better than sophomore in high school hitter.
Well, I think you probably reap the benefits of doing a lot of different things young. Like you're a guy that picks things up pretty quickly. I feel like, there's probably a pretty solid movement foundation, maybe more than you give yourself credit for.
Yeah, and that's more on my parents kept me busy in like a fun way.
Yeah,
So yeah, no regrets there.
I got you. But you were an Atlanta guy. And I mean, that's obviously a pretty intense baseball scene. Everybody from the Northeast wants to go to Atlanta. They want to go south to play baseball.
Mhm.
You wound up at Notre Dame. So you went from the warmer climates to cold winters. Um, what was it that drew you to Notre Dame? Obviously, amazing education, all that, but was it, the right fit? What was it that made you go to South Bend?
It was two major factors, I would say. The first being that professional baseball, let alone making a career out of it, was not exactly on my radar leaving high school. I think my best bullet in high school was like a roundup 88, I want to say. Undersized guy. And I was kind of thought I saw college baseball as like my pinnacle until I got there and I had some success. So Notre Dame, with the education side of it, was really, really appealing to me. My mom works in finance, and from learning about careers and stuff growing up, that was what I thought I was destined to do. And good business school. And the second facet of it was they were just joining the ACC when I was being recruited there. And I was told a long time ago to go somewhere that you can play the game, not just wear the jersey.
Mhm.
And that kind of seemed like a place where I could play the game. It was a place where I'd get an opportunity to play and contribute early, and that was really important to me because if you're only going to get 4 more years of the game, you want to be on the field. Um, and they really got me. Our official visit weekend, it was pretty nice and everything. Like first time I went to visit, it was it was beautiful. They don't let recruits come in like January, February for a reason, but yeah, it was a great experience. I'm really happy. I think it made me a little tougher seeing a couple real winters. Little did I know I'd be ending up going back for a total of six or seven, actually seven falls, as I say, seven football seasons to actually finish my degree after leaving my junior year. So ended up being a much bigger decision than I realized at the time, but I think it's the right one.
I'm curious. So you talked about your best bullet being, 87. By the time you left, there were a lot of threes and fours that were in the mix. Like
Hmm.
those are a pretty regular occurrence. As a combination of starting, relieving. Like what do you attribute that big, jump over the course of time to?
I would say a lot of it was like maturing physically. Not that I was growing anymore, but I was not the strongest kid. I was a little carried a little more fat with me, and getting in like a real college weight room with, the thing they don't tell you about college is you're going to be there with 21, 22-year olds who have been lifting heavily for 4 years, where you're a senior in high school, you're probably the biggest guy around. And I kind of flipped a switch in me where I was like, all right, it's time to take this side of the game like really seriously. I got in better shape. I got a hell of a lot stronger. And I think that was the main velo grabs. And I will say like just like the reps, just throwing more and more, because you'll throw way more in college than you ever will in high school, obviously. So throwing more and more, you just kind of learn to move more efficiently. I think it's just a physical maturity process for me that got me those extra couple.
What about the actual adjustment to the cold? I mean, I'm sure there's a little taste of it in fall ball, but not a lot. But then your
Right.
first February game where it's 40 degrees out and you can't feel your hands, like, I mean, I'm sure indirectly it probably prepared you for pitching in Detroit, well into the
Yeah,
years later. But was that a hard adjustment coming from Atlanta?
it was, but I will say like the adrenaline spike of pitching, like it's your blood flow is going to get going. You're going to warm up. The hard part was like actually like warming up. You get those trust issues in your head where you're like, God, this feels horrible. Like the first couple, like, I don't know if I can do this. I think I got over those pretty quick. I'm not going to say I like pitching in the cold, but it's certainly something I've done and think I can continue to do. And adrenaline's a great drug. So it'll just get you going pretty quick.
So, well, obviously something worked. It got you to pro ball, right? You were a
Oh, yeah.
seventh, so it wasn't like you were a last ditch senior sign or something like that. But
Hmm.
when I went back, and I've seen you for years now, one storyline that the stats seem to tell that I'm not sure I ever appreciated was that you've thrown more strikes as your career has progressed. In college, it was 54 walks in 182 innings. Then you got to pro ball. In your first years of pro ball, you had 13 walks in 137 and two-third innings over three levels. And then just looking at the big league success you had this year, it was two walks in 21 regular season outings. It's less than a walk per nine innings. So, like, was it a delivery change? Was it a mentality shift? Or was it just like an awareness of that your stuff plays much better in the zone than maybe you had thought at certain points in your career?
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely a combination of all three. just getting as consistent as possible with your delivery, which just comes from years and years of reps, obviously. Um, that gives you the ability to get in the zone. But in terms of like mentality and not walking guys, I firmly believe that like if you're gonna get beat by getting hit around the bases, like that's it's not ideal. You have things you go work on, but that's a lot more acceptable than walking them around. Um, I also have a long-standing history of walks just burning me. I think I walked, it was like the first seven guys I walked in Toledo last year all scored. Um, I was not able to keep a single one of them from running the bases. So it just kind of became like a point of pride for me over the time where it's like, I don't walk guys. And I think mentality wise, a ton of that came down to count control. That's kind of my most recent way I've enjoyed thinking about it. It's benefited me. And I mean that is almost every offensive stat takes a nosedive from the even counts if you can throw a strike, right? Like the difference between 1-0 and 0-1 is massive. Difference between 1-2 and 2-1 is massive. And it's finding those leverage counts. And if you can avoid them altogether and just go 0-2, good for you, keep doing that. But it's knowing where to go, when to get in the zone, when to attack with your best stuff. And I'm not saying I'm serving them down the middle, but there are times where I'm willing to grab more plate than other times. Um, and to go, further on the mentality standpoint to it too, it's you if guys know you're not going to walk them, I think it makes the strike zone a little bit bigger for you at the end of the day, where guys are like, hey, I my best pitch to hit might be 0-0, and then you can start turning out some low pitch count innings with some weak contact early. I mean, who doesn't love that? So there's
It's
a lot of
now, right? Like in an era where guys are trying to throw 98 to the backstop at every showcase imaginable, like
oh yeah,
the guys that are consistently in the zone is shockingly rare, as terrible as it sounds.
yeah, and there's almost no downside to it. I mean, if you leave it middle, yeah, good luck,
Yeah.
But in terms of my stuff playing in the zone, like if your stuff isn't playing in the zone, pitching is going to be pretty difficult for you. These hitters are good. They're not going to chase three times in that bat, unless you're throwing some wicked stuff. But overall, like you're gonna have to get in the zone, and it's better to get in the zone early than late, and when you're ahead than when you're behind. And if you know those things and you've seen the numbers, it's a lot easier to challenge early and often.
I think the other thing people forget is like just by process of being in the zone more often, like the fields are better maintained as you get to higher levels. The
Mhm.
defenders are better, and the defensive positioning is theoretically better. So like
Yeah,
every step up you go, you actually should have, in spite of the fact that the hitters hit the ball a lot harder and are more
yeah,
skilled,
that was about to
kind of
say.
cancel it out. There are a
Mhm.
lot of reasons to trust your defense even more as you advance.
Yeah, and I've been incredibly lucky my whole career. I can't think of a time really where I've had even a subpar infield. And the way I like to pitch, the way I like to attack guys, you work quick, you get them on the ground as quickly as you can, and defense stays ready and make the plays for you. So,
One of the things I'm curious about, like when I first met you, like you were like a lot of other guys. You were chasing velocity at a
but yeah.
real level. Like, I mean, and
Mhm.
everybody does, right? Who wouldn't want to throw 97? And it seems like, there were times when like you sold out for it a little bit too much and maybe got away from pitching and you hear yourself talk. It's a very mature approach to attacking it. Was there a point at which that realization kicked in?
Yeah, this will sound bad, but I kind of felt like I had to almost give up on it. I I was just got myself to a place where I was trying so hard to throw hard from like the second my hands broke or the second that front foot lifted, that it was just like super high tension, teeth gritted. And, I think Billy Wagner said it where it's like you throw hard easy, right? That was lost on me completely. And like I was just tight. I was a little banged up all the time. There was always something nagging. And it wasn't until I tried to be as loose as possible with my arm path and to not really like not trying to throw hard until as late as possible that I found my velo stayed roughly the same, but my arm felt better and I could hit my spots better. Um, I just didn't really see like a path to 98 anymore, so to speak. But that's not to say I've given up on it. I still think I can get stronger. I still think I can get better and throw it harder. Absolutely. But it's definitely not like my number one priority with nothing else coming close anymore.
Well, I think the processes get better in different ways, and then it kind of happens. I think that's the way you
Right.
look at it.
That's what we're hoping for, at least. I'll let you know how it goes.
Right on. Well, your unfortunately your elbow went not long after your MLB debut. It may have been, in one way or another related to like always chasing that.
Mhm.
You did all your rehab with us at CSP Florida. Obviously, it was cool to see you take a huge step forward that, but it was a long time, like a year and a half.
Yeah.
And for you, it happened early in the season, so it was really most of 2 seasons. What advice would you give to young pitchers that are staring down, that 18 months away from the game? You obviously learned a lot during your time frame.
Yeah. Yeah. This is one of the few things I feel super qualified to speak on because I think I've done it as bad as possible. And I think towards the end, I was doing it about as well as possible. Um, First of all, I think looking at it as like a 15-month process is the first nail in your coffin because I mean, it was, I think my like full clearance return to play was close to 500 days. So if you're ticking down from 500 days, that's 0.2% per day. That is snail's pace. That is slow. It's super easy to get demotivated and just kind of fall apart. But I try to break it down into like as small chunks as possible. And it was like, at 6 weeks, like you're out of the brace. Good. That's a goal. Get out of the brace. At 12 weeks, I think it was like a push up, right? Good. Just focus on working towards a push up. Um, that is what I wish I knew when I started, but that helped me out a ton, especially the throwing progression is crazy slow. So treat every milestone like it's a big deal. Even if you're faking it at first, I promise you it'll feel very real. Um, and then secondly, don't try to have every day be the best day you could possibly have. That's you're gonna get super down when you have a bad day, and you will have a bad day. You'll have plenty of them. I tried by the end of it, I was trying to raise my average every week, like how my arm felt, how my pitches were moving, my work capacity, just try to raise my average on a weekly basis. It helped me zoom out a lot, kind of get more perspective, kind of help time pass a little bit quicker. And I think that would be like the two things I would say is break it down to chunks and dominate those chunks, but not at like a don't try to do everything all at once sort of way.
Yeah, I think people get so caught up. I mean, all that was great information. They get so caught up in it being perfect the second they're back. Like they don't realize how much competition has been missed. And it's one thing to have
Yeah,
a healthy elbow. It's another altogether just to sort out exactly what it takes to be a major league pitcher. And I think that's why a lot of guys do struggle. Like they do. We talked about it on a recent podcast. Is like people define return to previous level of competition of one pitch at that level. Like you don't go back to being an all-star pitcher
no,
like right away. There's a lot of soul searching that has to take place to get there.
100%. And I mean, the last pitch I technically threw in a game was in the big leagues, and I'll never forget my first like game back in low A playing the Bradenton Marauders. I had to come back and I had to pick up and turn and make the throw, and my heart was jumping out of my chest because I realized that I had not really done that at game speed in 2 years or whatever it was. It was wild how quickly old things feel new again when you're coming back.
Absolutely. One of the things that, I also last year probably taught us, like AAA and the big leagues are very different things. So in 2024, you had one back-to-back in the minor leagues that year. And then after that, you had five once you were called up on August 22nd. And the majority were also very high leverage situations where it's come in, get a ground ball in a big spot, whatever it is. What were some key strategies for you going from a very well manicured kind of routine in the minor leagues to going into the chaos of like a playoff hunt? Like, were there things that you employed to stay fresh and with all that?
I absolutely. I mean, first off, like our training staff was phenomenal. Any little thing I had, the second it came up, I would just go to them and they fixed it for the most part, or at least put me on the path to fixing it. So, I mean, trusting your ATs, being willing to go to them, I think is great, and I'm really happy I have that here. But for me, it just comes down to just like it's sleep, it's diet, and it's a solid routine. Um, and a little bit of like the maturity of it is realizing that you're not going to pitch feeling 100% every single time. You have to kind of know your thresholds when you need to do a little more, or you need to do a little less in terms of prep work or your throwing program that day, or you know hang out in the cold tub a little bit longer when you need it, things like that. But for me, it was a lot of just no matter what was going on that day, just hammering out my routine, no matter how I felt, like hammering out my routine once the game started, but then treating the pregame as sort of a how do I feel? What do I need? Like being really honest with myself about that.
Yeah, people don't realize how many opportunities there are to go through just high quality warm ups in a given baseball day, right? Like there's
Yeah.
free throwing, you're warming up for that, then you're doing pitcher stretch. It's kind of like two that happen within an hour. And then if you're going to the game later on, you've got another one that's taking place. So if you really have no excuse to lose range of motion if you're going to actually do those
Yeah.
throughout, you got to be on top of it.
And if you think you're not going to get caught in the fire drill, like you are, there will be times where your name will get called and it will be, can you get the next hitter? Can you get the guy in the hole? And you got to go quick. And I think a lot of that is like trust too. Because I used to be the guy with my old elbow where I would just throw all day. If you gave me four batters to get warm, I was throwing 30 pitches in the pen, getting everything as dialed as possible. So I think kind of getting over the trust issues a little bit, throwing what you need to actually be ready, your routine, and then just maintenance throwing is a big key. And I'm still bad at it, still need to improve at it, but I definitely threw less bullpen pitches than game pitches this year,
Uh,
which I think was the goal.
that's a big deal. It's the bullets that count are the ones that are in the game.
Exactly.
So 2024, we kind of alluded to it in passing, like was a breakout year for you. You pitched in some really high leverage spots, had a lot of success on a team that surprised a lot of folks. But a lot of this was also a collection of, arsenal adjustments that took place, after you wrapped up your Tommy John rehab when you went over to the Tigers initially. What were some of the big adjustments that kind of allowed you to reinvent your arsenal at age 28?
Yeah, I think chief among them was adding the second fastball shape. I think that's been more valuable to me than just about anything. Um, Not only is it helped me better, get lefties out better, but I think it protects the four seam a little bit more too. My first stint that did not go well, I was like 60% four seam or something ridiculous like that. I still might throw 50% fastball, but it's two different shapes that I can use in very different ways. So I think like that was arsenal adjustment wise, that was probably the biggest. And then I'm the type of guy who will tinker until it hurts me, basically. No pitch has ever technically been good enough. It's always like, can I get more out of it? Um, Sometimes that can be very beneficial. It helped me find like a new version of my changeup that was with effective pitch from you last year, but it also helps you mess up a good changeup. So I think again, I call them trust issues, but I think getting over some trust issues and just trusting that that pitch I'm throwing is the best version I'm getting for the foreseeable future, and I just need to put it in the right locations for it is also a huge help to me.
I think where I'm going to give you a pat on the back. I've seen more maturity in your offseason pens, where you used to beat yourself up a lot when the pens weren't
Oh,
great. And I
yeah,
think now you recognize that sometimes those shapes, they take care of themselves when you get to the higher intent stuff. It's like the
yeah,
guy want to see elite break profiles just playing catch, and you don't see a good slider until somebody actually gets on the slope or ramps up enough.
right. Yeah. I mean, it's your pitch shape at 80% is not going to be the same as it is at 100%. So I spent years of my life getting mad at my 80% or my flat ground pitch shape. Probably wasn't necessary, but hard to regret any of those things, right?
The Max Scherzerism, I'd rather tame a tiger than motivate a donkey, right?
I've not heard that one. That's pretty good. Yeah.
All right, so we talked, or not so much us. You talked a lot with our pitching crew this offseason about this concept of horizontal approach angle, and you are one of the more extreme ones in baseball. So maybe shed some light for our listeners on what horizontal approach angle is and how it makes you successful.
Yeah. First, I'd like to say that this offseason was the first time I had heard that term. I'm very familiar with
Me
vertical
me
approach
too.
angle.
Me too.
As a two heater guy, vertical approach angle is a really big deal for you. Um, but when pitching coach Spencer Stockton brought it to my attention and kind of showed me that I was an outlier on it, like I kind of asked him to like double check his work almost like, really? Like my slider outlier? Like that's not, a thing. But essentially horizontal approach angle, if you think of how the ball passes through a three-dimensional strike zone, it horizontal approach angle measures the degrees off of center that the ball is entering the strike zone. So if you were to take a pitching machine, have a perfect backspun four seam, it would be, I think you would call it close to zero, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it'd be close to zero if it was perfectly straight. If you take the same pitching machine, scoot over to the edge of the rubber and point it down the middle, that is going to be a different angle. I think you'd call it -2 or whatever. 2 degrees it's coming in. I think my slider was around 6.8 or something like that. Um, I should have pulled that number up, but yeah, it's the metrics on it, like a TrackMan readout might not jump off the page, but I throw it from so far of center with still kind of a sweeping motion that I get a really outlier horizontal approach angle, which is just giving me a ton more confidence going into this season to like trust it more,
Mhm.
throw that thing to the right spots where the horizontal approach angle benefits it, which Spence laid out to me in super clear presentation. So I'm really excited to use that information. I think it's really cool. And anytime I get a better um, idea of what the hitter's actually seeing, if they're seeing that ball come in sideways, I'm going to try to exploit that.
The irony of it is you're fishing buddies with Steve Cishek, and I
Mhm.
spent 15 years around Steve during his career, and I'm pretty sure this is probably what he made an entire career on, is basically throwing a ball
Yeah.
and right-handed hitters. But
Yeah,
this is
it's like looking back and finding ride guys and that they didn't know they were ride guys back in the day. But yeah, I mean, if anyone's ever seen Steve pitch, that's the pinnacle definition of horizontal approach angle maximizing right there.
we're just
Um,
applying what we always saw but just couldn't explain.
yep, yep. And now they have numbers for it. So
All right, so I'm curious. You've reinvented yourself. You've done some cool stuff. What's next? How do you continue to refine and improve as a major league reliever?
yeah, I think me 3 years ago would probably have said throw 100 and walked off. But I still think I have a lot of maturing to do in terms of my routine. I've been told I'm not doing enough before. I've been told I'm doing too much. Kind of find that Goldilocks zone where I can just be consistent and get myself in a better position to compete every day. Um, Beyond that, it's always just going to be location ability. I'm not a big strikeout guy. I haven't been for a while, but I think a lot of that is due to some lack of location ability with the off-speed stuff. Tried to really key on it this offseason. Have to probably continue keying in on it for a while. Sometimes I like to think I get stuck in the strike zone. So just kind of creating more opportunities for chase in the early advantage counts, I think is going to be just the next big piece for me to work on.
Well, that man never satisfied. Typifies your career.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, we always rock a lightning round towards the tail end of this. Who do you like
Mhm.
to watch in today's game?
There's far too many. My favorite guy to watch right now is my current teammate Tyler Holton. Just a guy who can go out and just move the ball around and move it so many different ways. It's like watching chess when someone's trying to play checkers sometimes. Um, it's an absolute great time for me. I really enjoy watching School pitch as well. Obviously, it's a spectacle to me just watching how incredible that guy has been. Um, but around the league, I'm going to stick with lefties. Good friend of mine, Jesus Luzardo, has always been one of my favorite ones to watch. Super excited to have him back on the mound this year with the Phillies now. But I mean, I'll be cued in for every single one of those games. Um,
It's hard to find a true comp for your delivery too. It's like
yeah,
go and watch somebody that you're trying to emulate. So it's a tough question to answer, I think.
yeah, absolutely. But in terms of just like the guys who I find are fun to watch, those are my top three right now, I'd say. But
Um,
I'm a sucker for left-handed pitching, obviously. So
Um, you're also a guy that you've experienced multiple organizations. Obviously, you went through the college ranks. You've been to a few different private sector locations. Like, I'm curious, what are some of the qualities of the best coaches you have? And the reason I ask is there's a lot of coaches, kids and parents that listen to this, and a lot of them are just trying to find the best way to get through to players so that they can help them. Like, what are some things that have helped you the most over the years and the people you've interacted with?
absolutely. Number one overall with every coach has got to be communication. There are pitching coaches all over the world who can probably take one look at my delivery and say, I can get this guy 3 miles per hour, whatever that may be. But if they can't effectively communicate that to me, it's worthless from my point of view. So it's having someone who you can have an honest conversation with, who can say the same thing multiple ways to you until one clicks. And a lot of that comes with patience and just trying over and over again. Finding a coach that's willing to try um, is always important. And then just it's so ambiguous, but just a guy with some like good feel, like especially at younger levels. There's a time that I need someone to yell at me, and there are times where I need someone to have like an honest conversation with me, and Finding coaches who know what tool to use and when, I think is what really makes like a good coach great.
Those are great answers. I also know you're a voracious reader. You're probably the athlete over the last 5 years that's probably educated me the most on various things throughout the world, like markets. Lou Trevino's been trying to explain Bitcoin to me for like a decade, and I'm still not there. But
Me neither.
okay,
No
that
one
makes
knows.
it a lot better because you're a finance guy at Notre Dame. I'm just state school trash. But I know you read a ton. What's one book that you think every player, should read in this journey?
Um, I actually, if I can give you two, because I've had two in the last couple of years that I think have been huge benefits to me. Number one is Do Hard Things by Steve Magnus. Um, I know, like for me, growing up in late '90s, early 2000s, there's kind of a weird definition of toughness, um, and this book kind of goes into how that might not necessarily have been correct.
Mhm.
And as someone who's dealt with failure at a high level and coming back, trying to come back and doing it, it was a huge help just to kind of redefine how I thought about myself and what I was trying to do. Um, and then recently, I got a copy of uh, Chop Wood, Carry Water.
Nice.
I think it's one of the best, like just simplified pillars uh, of mental performance. It's an easy read, it's a quick read, and every single chapter has like something in it that you can go use, especially if you have a high school kid playing at a high level and you want to introduce him to the mental side of this game. That would be the first place I started.
I love that. Well, those are both good ones. And those are, I feel like we've gotten those recommendations before. So strength and
Yeah,
numbers, I think you got to look for the things that have been reiterated across a few different
yeah,
guests.
they're great.
All right, last but not least, give teenage Sean Guenther some advice. If you could go back in time, what would you tell him?
I have a hard time wanting to change anything right now, right? It all kind of worked out. I guess I would say like, hey, try to relax a little bit more. Like you might still have all your hair at 30, which trending in the wrong direction there for me.
You're in good company.
But yeah, exactly. But I also like number one, just take more pictures. When I first got up with Miami, I like didn't want to be the lame rookie who was running out to like take pictures of everything. But now I have first times I was in really cool places and I have no pictures or nothing. So I would say just take more pictures. It's always fun to go back and look at them and then just relax a little bit to try to have more fun and make having fun a priority for most of my career. I'm hoping to change that.
I love that. That's really good advice to end on, man. I appreciate you taking the time. It's been cool being a part of your journey and cheering you on. Uh,
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
no worries at all. You did great in your first podcast, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Best of luck this season, my man.
Thanks, Eric.